Well, hello everybody, and welcome to We the Nerdies Nerdflix and Chill podcast. I, of course, am Gary Theroux, and over there, staying awake using a mixture of crushed up amphetamines and Fun Dip, it's Sean Capri.
I am also drinking Diet Cola out of a giant McDonald's cup that I used earlier today. This is a reuse it's a recycle.
Wait, you had it in your vehicle, you went into a McDonald's and stole more pop?
Yes. I don't know what it is about this giant red cup that they have from McDonald's. This makes me feel like I'm the host of America's Got Talent, where they've got their clear sponsorships, like their Snapple bottle sitting in front of them. So if anybody's watching the YouTube version, it's brought to you by McDonald's and Spotify.
That would be a pretty sick sponsorship for us. Like, we wouldn't even be too proud for, like, Big Brother Canada style horrific ad placements where we have to do super obvious and tacky sponsorships. I'd be all over those.
I would totally be okay. For now, our show is brought to you by you, the viewer, just like PBS.
Oh,
just
terrific.
Like public broadcast.
Well, I'm being brought to you by a dinner that consisted of Reese's Peanut Butter Cup and a G2.
Oh my God, that's amazing. A G2! Like, keep it healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm watching my figure. Trying to stay awake. We're doing another Nerdflix and Chill After Dark here.
After Dark, yes.
We couldn't possibly be pushing our drop deadline any harder.
Oh, we drop it hard, Gary.
Excited to be back for you guys for another episode.
Woo!
This week we're going to be talking about Ghostbusters, and this week's 6th Degree of Chill, retro review of Road to Perdition. But we're going to start off by jumping back to a segment we haven't done for a couple weeks, and that's some trailer talk. We went the same trailers before Ghostbusters, and now we have an opportunity to talk about those.
Hashtag but first.
Hashtag but first. Not an actual hashtag for us, but I'd like to see the action we can get on that. Everybody's been great this week with the Twitter activity and Facebook activity. And just a reminder for everybody off the top, one of the best places to follow for podcast drops and any questions or anything we're throwing out there for our fans is if you go on Facebook and follow the We the Nerdy fan group, you'll get site updates, but also everything from this show it gets popped up there by my faithful co-host John Capri over there.
That's me. Yes, that is the best way. Try to make this as easy as possible, and we are figuring this out as we go, and appreciate everybody's patience and participation, and we're just keep going higher.
Protagonist.
Have we mentioned that it's late? Completely protagonist?
The stream of consciousness on this episode might be pretty rough. Yeah, I was trying to pump myself up with the Reese's Peanut Butter Sugar High and listening to Seven Dust on my rush home.
Nice.
So that we could record this. A little music recommendation for those of you listening to a movie podcast. Go listen to a Seven Dust album called Animosity and let it pump you up for whatever you need to do for a given day.
See, so maybe we're in for some interesting stuff because I was not listening to Seven Dust. Before this, I was hunting for Pokemon in my neighborhood. So I don't know what that... Of course you were. Yeah, I mean... What else are you going to do when you're a 32-year-old grown man?
Is there a way we could convince people that downloading this podcast would earn them like a rare Charizard or something like that, and we could...
I think that's definitely what's going to happen. So I'm glad you brought it up, Gary, because I was just going to say, maybe people could, I'll throw out a Pokemon lure, and people could just hang around my house whilst we podcast.
Just like the leftovers, just out on your front lawn, not speaking, just looking at you?
It would be so ridiculous, too, because I'll leave the window open. There's a window right to my left, and you can sit on my front lawn. You can hear my portion of the live recording of the podcast, and you can just sit and snatch Pokemon out front.
Oh, don't podcasts, after they reach a certain saturation point, a level of popularity, always have... they do a live podcast in front of an audience?
Yes, I think that's exactly what I'm going for here. Eventually, we're going to just merge the craze of Nerdflix and Chill and Pokemon Go. They're the same.
They're on equal footing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, $7.5 billion they added to Nintendo stock value in 1 week. Is that how that worked out?
Yeah, pretty much. And we are also, just so everybody knows, we are fulfilling an obligation that every podcast has to talk about Pokemon Go. right
Yeah.
now. So even if you're not related to video games at all.
I love that everybody's opinion on Pokemon Go is extreme to me, it seems like right now. They either love it or absolutely hate it and rail against it, and the vitriol it brought up is just amazing.
The third option actually is complete lying about either one. The people who say that they hate it but secretly they really love it, or the people who say they love it but they're lying just to fit in.
Oh, there you go. I thought you were talking about people who claim that they didn't know what it was, because we do have a friend who, as of last week, had never heard of the Zika virus. So,
oh, fair.
Obliviousness is maybe an excuse.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you don't believe in it, then you won't get it. I think that's how it works.
I'm pretty sure that's how everything works.
Yep, malaria's the same.
Before we get too far off on this tangent and kill the whole first half of our podcast, what trailers did you see at your viewing this week?
First of all, I have to say, nobody go to the Sherwood Park Theater. It's terrible. I have complained to them I don't know how many times. The volume is no good. If there is ever a time where I'm down on a movie, and I did watch it at Sherwood Park Theater, the mall there, no good. I have to come to you, Gary. I have to come to the Manning Theater. They know how to crank the theater. I get a louder sound out of my TV, for God's sakes.
Oh, yeah? Well, so long as we're shitting over on theater experiences, I will say, of the probably 50 movies I've seen at Manning Town Center since Cineplex opened that location, I think 40 of them have a 5 or 10 second blip with their lights that happens about 5 minutes after the feature starts. After the previews, once the feature starts, just all the house lights come on for a second, and then they turn back off. But it's like, just a reminder, we're bad at our jobs.
Maybe they want to remind you just how not good looking your date is. Like, this is your last chance. You're going to be in here for a little bit. Have a good look. House lights are on. After that, lights out.
Try and anticipate when the movie's going to end and get out early. Yes. Well, we are trying to get rolling on this trailer talk segment, and I know we saw the first same previews, even though we were at different showings.
Yep.
And the first preview we saw is for a movie called Nerve, starring Emma Roberts and Dave Franco. Yeah, not James Franco, Dave Franco. And this is the story about, just based off the trailer, it's like a sort of a parallel a timeline, or maybe a near future scenario where internet connectivity and Wi-Fi and interactive gaming all comes into a thing where people pay you to watch you do shit in real life, and then they watch it as entertainment. And I'm curious what you thought of this trailer.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question first, too. So we're both very inquisitive tonight. I wanted to ask you if you felt old watching this movie, where, you know, the idea of this very social media driven, it's a YouTube culture kind of thing happening here, where I was wondering if this is like the future of movies, where it's really tapped into the culture that we live in, but I'm not sure that I'm necessarily like, I don't know that I would click the button. This is very like driven at the youth of today. I don't know if this is, I'm interested to see what the movie has to offer for sure, but I'm just wondering, just on a purely like social media, new age stuff, like, is this?
Well, I would say it's definitely skewing towards, it's definitely skewing towards a much, much younger audience. Millennials, if you want to call them that, but like you say, people who are that connected and constantly on their device. I think this is another link in the chain, another stop on the road towards theater interactivity, right?
What was that?
Well, we were kind of joking about, but something in the sense of like if you, I don't know if you remember Captain Power, where you could watch a VHS and shoot it screen. That's a little 80s reference for some of you, our younger listeners. But just something that you can interact with is coming based on this movie. But like you say, if you're talking about if you were the main character and you got a notification on your phone that says, we'll give you $100 to kiss a stranger for 5 seconds, and then a higher challenge and a bigger challenge and a bigger challenge, I think everybody's going to have a different answer to that question. I personally would probably say yes to doing stupid shit on the internet, because I have no shame, as evidenced by me putting my lack of talent on the internet for an hour every week. But
come on, I don't like this self-deprecating.
As it pertains to this movie, just to talk about it as a film, I would say it piqued my interest in the early going.
Yes.
And I was curious what they were going to make, and then they ruined their own movie.
I know.
By showing me what the twist is and how it's going to turn dark, and then the game is taking over their lives. And it's like, I would have been perfectly happy not knowing that and being surprised by the dark twist that this movie took.
Yes, I was happy about 15 seconds into this, 20 seconds. That's all they need to show me. And then like I realized, oh, this thing is still going. Like they haven't like stopped this and thrown a date. Like this is a movie at this point. And I'm so disappointed that they did that. The same thing, excuse me, as the Purge. They gave away everything in the Purge trailer, and it's the same thing here. I was in 100%. I'm very intrigued by this movie, even though it does make me feel a little bit on the old side, a little outside of the millennial sphere. I was totally in on this, and then they just give away the whole thing. It's disappointing for sure. It shows an insecurity in the movie where it seems like they feel like they need to overcompensate and show you like there's something interesting here. Like you had it. The premise is original. It's hip. It's on trend.
It's with it.
So
I'll ask you then, as a matter of moving on to the next trailer, was it bad enough? Was that disappointing enough to take you from what you would have said see it to now skip it?
Not quite at skip it, but it depends on what else is happening that week. But yes, it totally ruined it. Like it definitely lowered my excitement for it.
Oh yeah, see, and I'll go straight to say, I will say that was what happened for me. I was in just like you were, and then now I'll say skip it. Just watch the trailer a couple times, and then if you're conversing with your friends about it, I'm sure you can fill in enough plot and pretend like you saw it. Like you saw the whole movie here. You can probably guess what the ending's going to be. It's just, I'm totally out on it. So one of the suggestions we got for what we can do with this trailer talk segment is something I'm super excited for. I don't know if you can document this. Multitask and type and talk at the same time, but we're going to guess the Rotten Tomatoes critic score for this movie and in advance, and it won't pay it off, obviously, for some of these for a while for future episodes. So it acts as a long-term teaser, but I will say, based on what I've seen here, and I think what you said is absolutely correct about it skewing younger, and I would think that movie criticism is a realm of sort of an older crowd of people. I don't know if you remember a movie with Dakota Fanning called Pulse or Push, maybe? Sorry, Pulse was first.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to think of, and yes, thank you.
But I don't feel like these stylized movies that are geared towards kids in their late teens generally get a lot of critical respect.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's much prestige with any of the cast in this movie or anything like that. And I just see this sort of getting beaten up on, not to the point where it gets an Adam Sandler-esque single-digit score, but maybe a lot of indifference overall to this movie, and something that might end up in the mid-20s, like 26% is what I'll say for this movie.
Oh, snap. Okay, so for the record, we'll lay out the lot. It's not Price is Right rules. This is like golf rules. Where, well, is that really the best way to describe it? Just closest to the mark.
Yeah, we're going to add up. We're going to add up on any given week when movies start to debut. If we get more than one in a given week, we'll add up how many scores we had predicted, and our difference for our total difference from our guesses to the actual critic scores percentages.
Yep.
And we'll see who's better at this shit long term. And we're more than happy.
We need a trophy.
Absolutely, I'm sure that's coming.
Right now, all I have is
this
Iron Man toy.
Well, that'll have to serve, the Hulkbuster. But be super excited to have all the people who've been doing such a great job of contributing online to tweet us at Gary T Movies, at Sean Capri, at We the Nerdy, or on the Facebook fan group, or directly to us on Facebook if we're friends online. Tweet us your predictions for some of these movies if you have an opinion on these trailers, if you get a chance to see these same trailers we're talking about.
We're going to make this a huge game show, and we don't have to wait that long for Nerve to come out. I am interneting whilst talking. I think that you have your colon thing whilst might be my annoying. It's not as funny, though. July 27th is when Nerve comes out, so nice. We have less than a week when this goes live. My prediction is I'm going to go the other end. So you're going 26?
Yes.
I'm going to go 72.
Nice. Well, we're going to get some variation then on the first one, probably. So moving on, the next trailer that we saw before Ghostbusters was Maui. It's the Dwayne Johnson. Is it Pixar or just
it looks
a
like
Disney animated feature?
It looks, just Disney. And I think it's Mona.
Moana? Maui. His name is Maui? But Moana is the name of the movie?
Moana?
Yeah, it is Moana. Moana? Well, this is great for their branding effort. So
They start out with
The Rock as a Samoan demigod. It is called Moana. It's coming out in November from Disney. An animated feature about a Samoan demigod, and we only got a teaser trailer. One of his daughter or his niece or whoever it is the subject of a little bit of exposition from The Rock as the demigod Maui.
Mhm.
And he's sort of trying to entertain and explain who he is. And then we get some fast cuts and some visuals and get excited for Disney's next effort without actually going into the plot or anything like that. So, but that being said, I think you don't need much more than this for a movie that's coming out in November and is Disney and The Rock. That the Q score for this by the time it comes out is going to be sky high. I think it's going to have a lot of recognition by the time it comes out. And I have some thoughts on where it's going to end up. But how will you go first on this one? What do you think?
I think this is a perfect fit. It seems like they have somehow made a movie that stars Lilo's older Lilo and Stitch? Yeah,
Lilo
yeah.
and Stitch.
Older cousin is in this. Perfect. I can't believe we haven't had this movie already. An animated movie with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. We haven't seen The People's Eyebrow since I think The Rundown is probably the last time we saw something.
Good call, yes.
Some blatant throwback to The Rock's past. I'm very excited about this. I can't wait to see how he does in the voice acting realm.
You're generally pretty forgiving to family movies. You like them quite a bit.
I do like them, but well, I wouldn't say I'm forgiving. Like I was
maybe not in your critique, but you get
excited
excited for them in terms of anticipation.
I will forever be a little child, which explains my Pokemon, my Hulkbuster, which is right in front of me, and I don't know if Josh Stapleton is listening, but he also sent me some sweet coasters that look like Nintendo stuff. So yes, I like the kid stuff, which sounds weird to say. I'm going to go really high on this one. I think they knocked this one out of the park. I think The Rock is just on fire. He's franchise Viagra, as I think he said on Saturday Night Live. Yes. I will go as high as 91 on the Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, sweet Jesus. That is a Pixar-esque score.
Mm.
And like I said, I don't think this is Pixar. It's just Disney Studios by themselves. I will say that I'm not as predisposed to eagerness when it comes to family movies, but I think right now there may not be anybody as bankable as Dwayne Johnson. Mm-hmm. And you mix that with Disney, it's really going to come down to time of year and what else is in theaters at the time. So I think it's going to really crush at the box office. I would say see it. There's nothing in here that would make me say they're not to go see it. But in terms of the guessing game, I think it might come in. I'm going to be more skeptical. And even by saying that, it's going to be higher than you think for a guy who's saying, it's going to be forgettable. I think it's going to come in somewhere around 70.
Oh.
So I'll do 7-0 exactly for this movie.
Alrighty then. A safe guess.
I think there's a good chance we're going to end up in between those two numbers, but I want to leave room for Disney sort of completely fucking up this style of movie, trying to, or not necessarily fucking out, but being compared directly to Pixar and almost losing points because the bar's been set so high.
Mm-hmm.
It would be sort of cheating to go and look at the RT scores for some of the Despicable Me's and Minions and some of the animated movies that weren't put out by Pixar in the last 5 years, and I won't do that, but that's just my read of the situation. So
yeah, Frozen wasn't very good. Wreck-It Ralph, pretty terrible. Zootopia, nobody liked any of these movies.
Oh, go kiss a dick. You're so awesome.
Kiss a dick? I mean, it's cool if that's what you do, but...
Yeah, absolutely fine with that.
Go nuts.
I just don't think you'd be a fan, and I wanted
no pun intended on the nuts.
So the next preview we saw is for the next entry in the Dan Brown series, Inferno. This is Tom Hanks and Ron Howard's continuing realization of the novel series that started with the Da Vinci Code and then Angels and Demons. The preview here, was a full trailer, not just a teaser, sort of laying out the whole scenario of someone trying to unleash a plague as a matter of population control, because they believe that, again, in the vein of villains who feel justified in what they're doing, this is what the world needs to survive. And again, Tom Hanks's character, Professor Robert Langdon, is roped in to solve this mystery in time to save the world. And again, we could cheat and look at the RT scores for this, but I will say, if you've seen the first two, go see this. Mm-hmm. If you like this type of movie, it feels at this point kind of formulaic and unnecessary. It feels like profiteering based on the fact that they made the first two, so they've got to release the third one. Dan Brown made the book, and it was very popular in terms of sales, although I believe a significant step down. This is a guess here from Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons. I don't know. Have you read this series at all?
I have not. I collect books that just seem to gather dust.
And go unread.
I have many books next to me right here. I haven't read a single one of them. No, I don't know why. I miss the craze. I have this weird thing where, aside from Pokemon Go, when things are uber popular, I go, I'm not gonna get involved in that. And it's so stupid because like there's that whole thing with the Da Vinci Code. Like everybody was reading it. That was probably one of the first books I can really remember, maybe outside of like Harry Potter, where just everybody, everywhere you look, people were driving and reading the Da Vinci Code. Like before we had cell phones to distract us while we were driving, people had these giant books and they were reading the Da Vinci Code. I never got around to it, and so I never had that connection to the story when I watched the movie. I thought the first movie was okay. I didn't get excited enough to watch Angels and Demons, but something, I don't know, maybe it's just that we're so outside of, and this also speaks to my deep-rooted damage, where it's not popular anymore, so now I'm intrigued. Like, that's really stupid. I'm excited to see this. I think that maybe it doesn't feel as forced. Like, you're kind of saying it maybe is a little contrived or like expected that they just finish this thing off. I feel like they've taken a lot of time away from this whole story. Even Tom Hanks, you don't really see in too much these days, aside from being the captain now. I'm excited to see this. And he gets me at the end of that movie. Holy crap. Like when he finally realizes that he's safe, Captain Phillips, it's a good movie.
Hot take from Sean Capri. Captain Phillips, good movie.
It's good. It's rated sideways. Let's see. Let's go to Rotten Tomatoes. Guys, did I mention that it's 11/20?
What are you going to Rotten Tomatoes for? No. Cheat.
Oh.
So I will say.
I'm not cheating. I was going to tell you what my prediction was.
Oh, I got you. Okay, so before you do, in the interest of fairness, I'll go first. And also because I want to see if I can tamper with your number, if you'll keep yours in your head or you'll let me skew this. So this is just a personal opinion. I didn't even read reviews on the books. I have read all three. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed the first two quite a bit. I was sorely disappointed by Inferno as a book. I thought it was clearly forced by Dan Brown. Like, these things make so much money, I have to pump out another one. Felt a lot like the book version of a Transformers sequel. So I don't like the source material, and I don't like the fact that they're making this movie because it exists. I don't think that this book was, like you say, it's not as popular anymore. I don't think anyone was begging for this movie to be made. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's still a cult following for Dan Brown books, and their fans are telling Ron Howard, you need to keep going. But I have no excitement whatsoever for this movie.
Wow.
I would say skip it if you weren't a fan of the first two. And in terms of predicting a Rotten Tomatoes score, I'm going to continue on my negativity and say Ron Howard and Tom Hanks keep it out of the absolute basement. But I'll predict something in the neighborhood of 35%.
Holy crap. Really? 35%. Yes. I went with as soon as you said I'm going to try and mess with your mind, I went ahead and typed in my score into the thing here. I'm up a little bit more average, I guess, 79%. I think they do a bit of a comeback here.
Is 79 not glowingly positive?
I don't think so. I think it's kind of like just under like your 80-80 rule, for example. Like I think that would kind of fall outside of your I'm going to go see this even if I don't like this genre of movie based on the 80-80 critics.
And we've explained this a few times on this show over the course of the episodes. But for those of you who don't know, the percentage on Rotten Tomatoes from critic scores is just a percentage of reviews that were either positive or negative.
Right.
It's a percentage of positive reviews. It's not that's a 79% out of 100 score for that movie. It's 79% of reviewers gave it a positive review. So I guess you're right. It's not necessarily saying that this is a perfect movie because that's a large percentage saying they did not like the movie expressly. But I think that's pretty high. So why don't you tell us about our last movie?
Billy Lynn's Long time halftime walk is the longest title in our. We had a streak going of one word titles here, and I'm a big fan of that, as we know. Ang Lee, it's funny because when I think of Ang Lee, I think of Hulk. Yes. I think of the very first Hulk, and that's not how they're pitching this movie. This is from the mind of The Life of Pi, and he's actually got quite a resume these days, so it's nice to see that coming from Ang Lee. Hidden Tiger, Crouching Dragon, and other animals of kung fu fighting.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? Are you getting a little vocal dyslexia here?
It was purposeful for humor. It might have missed. That's fine.
Yeah, airball.
People can let us know. Jesus, throws up a brick. We've talked about this one before. This is a pull at the heartstrings. Soldier returning from war, looks like trying to get back into life, but also kind of maybe dealing with some PTSD. I don't know what to think of this. It looks like it's trying to be a visual feast, but
because it's Ang Lee and
there's a lot of fireworks. There's a lot of perfectly composed shots. The composition looks really nice. A lot of fireworks. I don't know what to think about this movie. I think this looks pretty pretentious, to be honest with you. I'm gonna be on the lower side of this. I want to be excited.
So first of all, just on our regular trailer talk, like, see it or skip it for you. Are you interested?
I'm a skip it. Like, I'm definitely a wait and at the very least a wait and see. But I'm not pushing little kids over to go to the theater to see this.
I agree, and I would say skip it as well, unless something forces me to change my mind, and that would be, like you mentioned, something like my 80-80 rule, where if I end up being completely out to lunch on the critical reception of this movie and the fan scores are high and the reviews are high, great. But I don't think it's going to make a lot of money. I don't think a lot of our friends are going to go see it and say, you got to go see this thing. Mm-hmm. I would say skip it as well. My initial thoughts.
What's the song that's in the We Could Be Heroes? Is it the Wildflowers? Not the Wildflower. Well, what's Dylan's
One Headlight? Yeah.
God, that is such an overused. Like it reminds me, like The Social Network did it really well. With that was a Radiohead song, I think they did there.
Yes, absolutely.
That did it right.
Recently, Kanye for Assassin's Creed, and Beyonce redid a song for. I want to say no. That was the girl with Dragon Tattoo was the Led Zeppelin opening.
Yes, and Neighbor Matt. I was just watching a Neighbor Matt cut of a Beer Fest trailer.
Fantastic.
Dude, oh God, it's so good. I'm going to post that pretty soon. It's just the best. Anyway, Rotten Tomatoes prediction. This comes out on Remembrance Day, Veterans Day if you're in the States, November 11th, which, I mean, just 2 on the nose. Come on with this stuff. Go celebrate freedom and watch an Ang Lee directed army flick. Good Lord. I think this is going to be trash. I'm at a 25 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay,
I just talk myself down further. The more I keep streaming my brain onto this podcast, I think this is gonna be bad.
And I think the heavy-handed patriotism will work for a certain segment of movie reviewers. I think a movie told entirely through flashback. I didn't even realize off the last time we watched it until this viewing that it was an Ang Lee movie, and I also paid attention to who was in the supporting cast, and it's actually really good. Right? I really like anything Steve Martin's in. I feel like he's got a pretty good radar for garbage. So I don't think this is going to be unwatchable, but I feel like it's going to be super heavy-handed. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned the word pretentious. We're going to see a lot of military operations through flashback, it seems like, based on what the trailer looks like. And I think that'll bring it sort of into the middle of the scoreboard. And I'll say 52 for this movie.
I just reversing my 25. I see what you did there.
I think it's going to be eminently forgettable. I just think this movie is going to come and go with absolutely no notoriety.
I actually hope
it may be that the almost 4 minutes of talk we gave this right now predicting its score is the most press it's going to get on a podcast with in the middle 2 digits of listeners. I'm predicting. So, I just don't think this is going to land or hit with anybody. So that was the last trailer we saw before we got to see our feature film of the week, which was the new Ghostbusters movie, starring Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy and Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jones, directed by Paul Feig, who did Bridesmaids with a lot of the same cast. And I think everyone knows the fact that it's a reboot, not a sequel from the original 30 years ago. In this case, there's a ghost invasion in Manhattan, and Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy's characters get together, reconnect. They've got a history together, and start looking into the paranormal activity that's going on in New York and stop an otherworldly threat. You've got a great supporting role from Chris Hemsworth in this movie.
Yes.
And, a lot of throwaway jokes that really sort of formed my opinion on this movie more so than the story that they told. So what were your thoughts on Ghostbusters?
Okay, so really quick, if anybody's following me on Twitter at Sean Capri, I tweeted this right as soon as I got out of the theater because these were the things that hit me right just coming out. Number one, I liked it. 25 minutes too long. I thought Leslie Jones surprised me. I thought that she was going to be kind of the same and she ended up being mostly what I expected, but somehow it worked. Just that screaming voice that we've come to know from her on Saturday Night Live. Yep. I thought that her being that predictable was going to hurt the movie, and actually I was looking for her to save a lot of the scenes, and she managed to do that. Kate McKinnon is just like, this is, I think, a breakout performance. I really enjoyed her in this.
She's incredible.
Thank you. I was so worried that you were going to... It's different. It's a different role. It's a different performance. She's really out there.
Making a choice here. And yes. I saw it in an empty theater, so I had the ability to make notes, which is something I don't really get to do when we go to the theater for these movies usually. And one of my notes is that Kate McKinnon is absolutely amazing. And I feel like if there is still such a thing as a breakout performance, where as a result of this movie coming out, you start getting offers, you start developing scripts, you start getting put in things that feature you. Mm-hmm. And 18 months to 2 years from this date, she is flooding the market with content. This could be it. She's just electric when she's on screen. Whether she's the one speaking or not, you find yourself looking for her.
Yep. So confident too. Like, absolutely. You can just tell, like, she took this role, and like nobody else could give her the direction to play it the way that she did. This was her comedic mind. And I think about Melissa McCarthy in Bridesmaids. I don't know if we'd ever heard, well, we'd seen her in Mike and Molly before that, but I didn't really know too much about her, but she was a huge breakout there. I don't think she's very strong in this, but we'll probably get back to that.
I find it, there's another note I made. I found it shocking to me that someone who's as on fire as Melissa McCarthy is right now, just releasing hit after hit. Spy was so good. Even the stuff that misses, like The Boss, and I can't remember the one where she played the Tammy. I think she played just like a white trash character who was on a road trip with Sarandon, maybe, or Sigourney Weaver. Even the stuff that doesn't land, she's getting huge openings. She's wildly popular. She can carry a movie now, it seems like. She is top billed and most well-known out of these four for non-SNL fans. And she's, by any measure, at highest, the third funniest person in this movie. And I find that shocking to me. That's the highest you can go, because McKinnon is by far the best, and I love Kristen Wiig. Oh
man, I put some of the ghosts funnier than Melissa. I think she is.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Unfunny, like she, like I don't like any of the movies that you just named as being like hits. I don't find her funny at all. I'm so disappointed with her trajectory since.
Oh really?
Bridesmaids. I thought that role was just absolutely incredible, stole the show, and ever since then. You know, I just don't see her pushing the boundaries. It's hitting the same notes for me all the time. Just being a disaster. And even in this movie, like, she's not really quite that. And because I feel like she's outside of her comfort zone in this movie and just comes off completely boring. I think she should have been recast. I think she's here to put butts in the seats, but to me doesn't add anything. and is
Yeah,
one
I
of my
don't know
negatives on the
what
show.
it is she's missing. A magnetism or a charm, if that's such a thing. If she's just playing too straight of a character and is counting on these wild swings for jokes to land. And I feel like right now there's a type of humor that you called out in Mike and our review of Mike and Dave's Need Wedding Dates about that joke that gets done quite a lot now. I think in this case it was Leslie Jones who actually said it, and yet I'm conflating the two here. But those jokes that, oh, this place smells like old popcorn and regrets or whatever it is, that there's a type of humor that is on brand for McCarthy and Wig and Paul Feig and this crew. And I think what you get with that is it's almost quantity of jokes over quality, right?
Yeah.
They're just going to keep taking swings. They're just going to keep trying to get hits. And they think they'll get enough jokes that land by throwing so many out there. I mean, in my notes, I wrote down that in the first 4 seconds, Jared from Silicon Valley is there, and they just it's not a laugh line. The characters don't even realize that he's being funny. It's for the audience. He mentions a face bidet, an anti-Irish security fence, and enslaving elephants in like his first 3 lines. And it's just, I'm dying in the theater. I'm one of like 11 people.
Our theater was packed and
really?
killing. And yeah, like, it's funny because you say like those, they kind of just come out of nowhere with those jokes, and you don't even know that that's coming. And so the first couple didn't really hit. We kind of like, you could even see people kind of look to who they're with and go like, did he just say that? And then they started to catch on like, these are pretty funny jokes that they're throwing. So I liked him. I want to jump off of Melissa McCarthy. Because this movie overall, I really liked. And so I don't want to dwell too much on the negatives here, because we should be focusing more on the positives. Thor, my God, so stupid in this movie. So I didn't know he had it in him. I mean,
Chris Hemsworth, for those people who haven't seen it yet, is playing the secretary for these 4 ladies in their newly formed Ghostbusters office, and he plays an absolute dope. He's wearing lensless glasses because
they get dirty.
He does, because they get dirty, right? Not because he needs to wear glasses, obviously.
It looks good enough.
And he commits fully to. I think he said he was playing in the semifinals of a hide and go seek tournament. There's a lot of throwaway lines. There's a lot of jokes that really land here, and I agree with you. He's great and memorable, and I'm glad you said that you liked the movie as well, because my feelings are overall very positive.
Yep.
And I feel like what I was doing a lot of times while I was watching this, thinking about it critically, less so than just sitting and enjoying the movie. I was thinking of what I would say here, and I think I was jumping back and forth in my mind as to who this movie was for, because I feel like the over 20 or maybe in their 30s crowd that's here for Wig and McKinnon and Leslie Jones and Melissa McCarthy and Paul Feig, that bridesmaids type humor, even though they know it's not an R-rated comedy, they're here for the SNL and the bridesmaid style humor, are gonna come away a little bit disappointed. The overall positive, but a little bit disappointed because it's not R-rated, and it felt like they were leaving jokes on the table because it has to be more accessible of a movie than that. They've got to appeal to more audiences than just the R-rated adult crowd. And yet, I still think that those people won't hate the movie.
Yeah.
And then I thought of myself as a fan of the first Ghostbusters, or someone at that age now, a 14-year-old going to see this movie. And I just kept finding this movie is hitting that demographic right in the feels. Like, this is absolutely hitting it out of the park for that demographic. The opening sequence is great. If I was 12 or 13 or 14 years old, you are into this movie. The ghosts are great. The jump scares are great. Everything's really, really compelling. And I feel like they carried that.
I got scared by it.
Oh, really?
I was like, I can't believe I just jump scared at Ghostbusters, for God's sakes.
The part that I hate in most superhero movies, the third act action sequence in this, I felt like was really fun and really light and really on brand for what this movie had started. And I felt like, in terms of a review, the only flaw I would say is that because they're mixing those two audiences, they're trying to make an adventure movie. I wrote down a couple of examples of how rarely this is done anymore. But like a Batman Forever or an Indiana Jones, where a movie just knows it's about adventure and it's geared towards that tween or early teen audience. I think the only thing that stopped it from being a very, very, very well executed version of that was the way they vacillated back and forth between the comedy and the adventure. And the way they did that was joke, 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 and then long data dumps, long exposition. Just drag the movie to a halt and let's move the plot forward. And then let's get all these characters to the new place and then joke, 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 joke. And then a long data dump again. So I think maybe that's Paul Feig's fault and that's direction.
Maybe, yeah. The editing could be a little tighter, I think, for sure. Because I was starting to wane a little bit and just kind of like shifting my seat, just like
you mentioned it was over long.
Yep. The only other thing keeping, I think, first of all, I want to again highlight the positive here. I'm so glad we got this movie and not. People might hate this. The Bill Murray, the Dan Aykroyd. I didn't want those guys in this movie at all, actually. And so I'm so glad we got it completely. This felt fresh. And I think that reboots have a hard time doing that, or even sequels that are paying homage to kind of a 20-year-old original movie like we just saw with Independence Day. That movie wasn't sure kind of where it was. That might have been better as a reboot. I thought that they did the reboot very nicely. I can't imagine this story and the way that this was told with a male cast. And so I came out of the theater just glad that this is how they did it, and these are the people who they cast in it, and that these are the people who made it. And I'm thankful that whoever is part of this movie did a really bang up job. And I know there was a lot of hate and a lot of negativity cast towards this because of a lot of that. And so I'm glad with the cast. It felt fresh. I really liked it. Cameos, underwhelming for me.
Cameo is underwhelming, and like I say, there are things that keep this from being great. But I agree with you on the whole that this movie is really well done and really on brand for.
Do you want more?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I don't think it's geared towards me, but I will have fun again. I think they've started a franchise. It didn't make a ton of money, but generally positive word of mouth. I think we'll end up seeing more of this, and I'm super happy with it. And I came away, if not with a ringing endorsement, with a hearty golf clap and thinking something in the lines of 3.5 out of 5.
I'm 100% 3.5 out of 5. I think it looks great. The effects are great. Cast is great.
Beautiful.
Yep. Yeah, not overly flashy, but like very reminiscent. All the neon, like neon is hot again. It's all the gadgets. I loved all the new weaponry, and it doesn't go like too far into, like, it still leaves, there's things that they haven't done yet in the Ghostbusters world, and I love that they haven't quite gone there just yet.
And so, yes, so three things to finish off our talk on Ghostbusters here. One, I think our 3.5 out of 5 is accurate. I wasn't fading it for any particular reason, but I feel like it does not underline McKinnon's performance the way it should. You should see this movie if only to see how bold and awesome she is in this movie. It's fantastic. Two, what you said about the visuals, the effects, it's a good time at the movies. I think this is a movie you should go see in the theaters, right? I think if you wait to see this on VOD, it'll be fun the way we're describing, but it won't be as fun as if you go out and get to the theater on this. And then third, I just think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, you brought it up briefly, all of the darkness surrounding this movie, all of the internet hate it got, both at the beginning for the trailer, and then this week, I don't know how much you followed this stuff with Leslie Jones.
Yeah, I was heartbroken to see that.
But I want to say, as to the beginning stuff on the trailer, it was a bad trailer. This movie outperforms that trailer, right? And the hate there, I just feel like, was internet trolls being vitriolic. There was some sexism there. I think there's a lot of fanboys there who do the whole "you're ruining my childhood" thing, which I've been guilty of in the past. Not tweeting at anybody. I would never direct that at anybody, but like, no need to remake my favorite things from my youth.
That's a thing though, but not because it's a female cast. Like, it,
for sure. Oh yeah, and they focused on that part of it, right? But the postscript after the release, what happened to Leslie Jones this week, for those of you who don't know, she just received, out of all four of them, an absolute barrage of hate, including most of it racially based.
Yeah.
And was retweeting hate to try and laugh it off, and then it got worse, and then it got worse, and then it got worse, and then she quit Twitter, and then she got a ton of support, and there was a backlash to the backlash, and now she's back But I think we'd both, and you might second this, and I want to hear your own thoughts on this. I think we'd both probably say, fuck racists, and I really hope a lot of those people die in a fire.
And that's too quick.
I can't believe that.
I hope they burn for a little bit, and then they get tossed into a pool and then drown just a little bit. Like they get like maybe half of their lungs filled with water, and then somebody pulls them out and then just launches them into space. And then they kind of like, as the atmosphere is getting thinner, they're drowning sort of again. But there's this weird pressurized thing that's happening because half of their lungs are filled with water. So the water starts coming out through all of their pores, and that's how they die. They die from the water coming from in their lungs to the outside, and they explode from the inside out. That's how I hope these motherfuckers die.
Oh, I desperately want you to write a Saw sequel where all the victims are internet trolls that have been gobbled up by Jigsaw. It's like a whole
you take care of the rest of the podcast. I'm going to write
that. it's an Inglourious Basterds style like revenge fantasy where everybody roots for the people doing the horrific murders. I just, like I say,
it's awful.
Horrible stuff. And I'm so glad that this movie is being positively reviewed. The scores on Rotten Tomatoes, 73, 58 from the audience is surprising.
Yeah.
But I think, again, that's that same segment of assholes who are just never going to get behind a female-led reboot of something that they loved. And I hope people go see this, and I hope they make more. And I hope what I saw in the theater, or what I assumed in the theater, is realized that it really catches on, and kids of a certain age have something that they can latch onto the way we did when we were younger.
Well said, Gary. Every time I add on a thought, we're going to go on for another 5 minutes. So why don't we...
Yeah, there you go. Okay. So moving along to this week's 6 Degrees of Chill segment. We connected last week from the Towering Inferno to Road to Perdition, also starring Paul Newman, with Tom Hanks and Jude Law and Jennifer Jason Leigh and others. And I was really happy that we ended up seeing this movie because I hadn't watched it in forever. I realized when I started viewing it that I had completely forgotten the plot of this movie. I just remembered having a generally positive feel for it. So we stayed in and saw Road to Perdition this week. And for those of you who are just joining us on this segment, this is where we do a spoiler-filled talk of a classic movie from our collections or from an on-demand service or something like that. And we'll talk about the beginning, the end, and we'll jump around and we'll try and be linear, but we usually fail horribly at talking about the movie in a linear way. I hope that you watched along with us for this spoiler talk, but if not, maybe you can jump in here and then make some suggestions for where we can go from Road to Perdition. But this is the story of Tom Hanks's character is a enforcer for a small town gangster in, I believe, the winter of 1931 is how it's described in the opening. Mm-hmm. And it's about his relationship with his son as his son realizes who he is, and they get wrapped up in this horrible world of gangsterism, and eventually Tom Hanks' wife gets killed and son gets killed, and it's just him and his eldest on a road movie, and this movie at certain points doesn't really know what it is. It's just telling you a story and meanders a little bit with a lot of great visuals and a lot of great actors and a lot of great scenes in what is ultimately maybe a little bit of a muddled final product. This has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 81 and 86 from fans, mm-hmm. and I would have agreed with that on spec before rewatching it. I hadn't watched it since it came out. This is from 2002, and it's probably close to the last time I saw it. And I gotta say, coming out of it, I watched the first 2/3 of the movie thinking, oh yeah, that's exactly where this belongs. 80s, 90s, excellent movie. And I disliked the final third of the movie so much that I would sort of put it in a more forgettable vein. And in terms of a review, I like to start off these segments so we can just talk freely and people know where we're coming from with my score. And I'll just say that in the end, I gave it more of a 3 out of 5. And I thought that the great moments were ultimately ruined by what I think is a horribly predictable ending and some sort of ham-fisted handling of the father-son relationship in the final third, and a lack of understanding of pacing, not necessarily pacing, but taking the viewer or taking the audience on a journey by Sam Mendes. I think is flawed, and we'll get into that later. But I just wanted to sort of throw my initial thoughts out there. What do you think coming out of this viewing?
I am always impressed with just how well you can put that, because I'm conflicted on this movie, and I basically just workshop my thoughts on the podcast with you, and you're like, here it is. And I'm like, I don't know. So I was sort of the same as you. I saw this a long time ago. I mentioned on the last show, I couldn't remember the plot at all. And as I was going through it, I'm like, I remember really liking this movie. And as you mentioned, it does start to get a little bit muddled. I start to get a little bored. It's not really sure what it is. But in the end, like, I still come away from this movie wanting to really like it. Like, I want to, like, when you say those words, I'm like, oh, I don't think that, like, it wasn't that bad, but I totally get where you're coming from. Because I think the father-son thing is a little forced. It even kind of like, there's a bookend here thing that happens where Michael Sullivan Jr. will open with a narration and he'll close with a narration. I remember the opening narration being very powerful, just setting the scene, just kind of having this mystery of who is Michael Sullivan. You even don't even get to realize at the very beginning, they don't say like, well, his his name is Michael and his son is named Michael, so they're going to have this special connection.
Yes.
They don't do that. So that's kind of great. But the narration at the end, if we can just skip right to there just for now, I just thought, like, we get it. Like, they kind of come out and say, I came to learn what my dad was, and I came to appreciate this, and all these other things. Like, we got that. Like, you told that story well enough, and there's just some things that they kind of come over and they treat you like a dummy. And say, like, did you see that? Like, we did something special with the dad and the son. Like, they had a connection. We're like, we got it. We were there the whole time. So, like, there are some parts of the movie, and maybe that's the overarching theme here, is that Sam Mendes doesn't, he takes you so far and treats you with so much respect for most of it, and then every now and then he'll kind of like smack you upside the head like you're a dummy and just remind you of what he's trying to tell you. But he already did. So I don't know if this was how early in his career this was, but it does have this kind of weird mix of a veteran type of, like, an experienced movie creation, because a lot of the shots are amazing. This did win Best Cinematography in the 2003 Oscars.
Yeah, it's a lot of
beautiful shots, great performance. I mean, I love Tom Hanks, Paul Newman. Daniel Craig was kind of weird. You know that's not his real voice, so you're just kind of like, I was super aware of his American.
I feel like he wasn't
Irish.
Bond yet. I feel like he wasn't Bond yet, and you wouldn't have felt that way had you seen it at the time, right?
Probably
I
not.
think it's a fairly strong performance from Craig playing a fairly loathsome character.
Very despicable.
Exactly, and doesn't get a ton of screen time, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree the performances are great.
I know that you hate, let's get right through this. I know you hate a certain actor in this movie.
Yeah, I don't know if I've had a chance to mention.
Nope. Let's air out the dirty laundry. Your Jude Law, what's going on?
I would just, I have a predisposition to liking certain actors. If we ever get a chance to watch anything starring Michael Fassbender or Kate Winslet, right, it is gonna get in the same way that Ginger Ladies get extra points from me.
Ginger Ladies.
In terms of acting, I give bonus points to Michael Fassbender and Kate Winslet, and I take away points from Jude Law. I think he's awful. I find him fairly loathsome, even in the work he's done that's sort of inscrutable. It's so excellent. It's undeniable. Like The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Yeah.
I find myself wishing someone else had done that good of a job. I just don't like him, and I don't know why. It's so severe. But I've always said that anything Jude Law has ever done would have been done better by Ewan McGregor. Mm-hmm. Just replace them, swap them out, recast like we've been doing, and whatever you do will be better. And it's funny because I didn't think he did anything particularly wrong in this movie, other than decide to have a ridiculous horseshoe haircut with his balding. And it feels to me so contrived and so planned that I almost feel like when he showed up on set, And like this is a deal he made with his hairdresser or in makeup. Like, hey, do a thinning thing where like I'm clearly losing my hair prematurely because I'm a weirdo and I'm gonna wear this stupid hat and it's gonna be a big reveal when I take it off. And I feel like he walked onto set that day in front of Sam Mendes and Paul Newman and Tom Hanks and took his hat off and said, "Hey, everybody, come and look at how much I don't care what I look like." Like it was so vain in a false way, and maybe that was just my hate of him coming on. I don't know if you felt the same way.
No, not even remotely, but I was super aware and I was thinking of you the whole time, as I often do when I watch these movies. Whenever he's sitting there when they first meet, I actually thought was a really cool kind of like a tension moment where they're in the diner. And he's sitting there and he's looking across at Tom Hanks and he's pouring the sugar into his coffee. And that might even be like a little easy, that on the nose, like I'm just going to pour 17 tablespoons of sugar into my coffee because, like you said, I'm a weirdo. I've got this weird thinning hair and my teeth are a disaster.
Yeah.
But I'm Jude Law. But just know, I don't care what I look like in this. So, like, the argument could totally be made. But I mean, I think the bias is coming through a little bit there. I think he genuinely gave me the creeps in this. Like, I did not want him to get anywhere near the Sullivans. I think that was effective. But
yeah, so that was the goal. So in that sense, they probably hit their target. So for the people who didn't watch along this week, so if we can try and go through this in a sort of linear way, right. I know from my notes, the first thing I noted was just that as we're starting off this story and learning who Tom Hanks' character is, the first thing I noted were that I have absolutely no recollection of what this plot of this movie is, and I'm excited to watch it.
Yep.
Right? And that I'm really impressed early on with Hanks. And I don't know if it's the bulk he's put on or what for this role, but odd to think either right now in 2016 or in 2002 that it's pretty impressive that Tom Hanks can play imposing so well. You think of him in a lot of different ways, whether it's Castaway, the first thing you think of, or Big, or Forrest Gump, or Philadelphia, or whatever your first thought is when you think of Tom Hanks, even in where he's playing mean or hostile in A League of Their Own, he's not hulking or dominant or imposing or fearsome in that way. And I think this quiet and large, maybe it's the way Mendes shot him, but he's playing that really well. And I found myself impressed early on with that.
I think that's a good point. And it's displayed not only just when he's holding a gun, but also like in his home. So like the family dynamic, I think, is very interesting. The wife definitely understands what his job is and what the trade-off they've had. So Paul Newman's character, John Rooney, has basically brought him into the family, given him everything, but the trade-off is you have to be a murderer, basically. You have to be at his beck and call. And there's this sort of unspoken understanding there that I really liked. And I think that's just part of it, is his adoption of that lifestyle, his wife's understanding of it, and his kids are being completely protected from that. But he's that, the kids look to him for, putting food on the table. They respect him. It's kind of like Anchorman ended up making a joke about it, like no eye contact. It's kind of like that thing, but in like, totally, you don't make you don't bother him when he's getting home. He walks in, he gets changed, he comes down to the dinner table, and like everything is very routine. And I think that speaks to kind of your point to his hulking and the presence that he has in this movie.
Yeah, and it may be of the times that this is a lot of relationships that sons had with their fathers, but it's also what you said. They're protecting those kids, but not in a false way where he comes home. And you see a lot of these in gangster movies or criminal movies where the father comes home and he runs to his kids and let's go have a catch and big hugs and tussle of the hair.
Yeah. Doors open. He's taking out the gun.
He does it by staying guarded, right? And he's got his gun, and early on, Michael Jr., his son addresses him as Sir.
Yep.
Lots of quiet, not a lot of how was your day and extra talk and warmth from him. And he's keeping his distance. And it felt very in keeping with the sort of period piece that we were watching, those early scenes in the house. And then they go to the wake, and it becomes clear early on that someone within the crew or the gang or the family is who we're having the wake for. And then there's a chance that John Rooney, Paul Newman himself, was involved in the death. And you start to see Daniel Craig and Tom Hanks in their roles as sort of keepers of the peace or enforcers of John Rooney's will.
Yep.
And he gets to be sort of a bodyguard or a bouncer in that scene early on. And then immediately afterwards, he's back in the house with a real somber and what I thought was a haunting moment, that piano performance with one hand each from Tom Hanks and Paul Newman, that is just one of these moments in film that I think makes me a movie nerd, in the sense that I don't know how many people would latch onto that and think this is amazing, but it's such a unique way to show a bond between two men who aren't related, that they can just sit and play in a way that feels very familial, and they match. It's like Tom Hanks knows Paul Newman's mood and matches it with the song that they play, and they react the same way when it ends, and the applause come, and it's like, that's not why we did that. We were sharing a moment here. It's like we're the only two people in the room, and it's like you showed us their bond. This is Mendes again with a deft hand. Showed us their bond with no dialogue.
See, I'm glad you brought up this scene, because I had the exact opposite reaction to it. I thought that,
really?
So two things. In case you haven't noticed by now, everybody's Irish, and the music that's sitting on the piano, it's a music book that's called Irish Songs.
Yes.
So just so you know, this is Mendes or whoever it is putting that book there. Just so you know, this is Irish people. We are talking about Irish, okay? So and if you didn't recognize the music, it's Irish music. So another just like, oh, come on. And then I thought that I didn't get that. I know that that's what was the intent for that scene. It was, this is a moment that they're connected in a way that, like, this is maybe the son that John Rooney wishes that he had, but instead he has this bastard Connor who is Daniel Craig. They share this moment. I already got that. Again, like, I got that everywhere else in this movie. This is what I'm talking about at the very beginning when I opened up with my thoughts on this, where this is too much. It's too easy. I've seen this scene 100 times before, and I'll probably see it 100 times again. Like, how do these people even know? Do they both know how to play piano, and they're both perfect at it? And they did,
because they've done it before. They've clearly played this song at other wakes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They've clearly, or he taught it to him
special.
As a young man. It felt special to me. I like when we disagree, right? Because it's funny. It doesn't feel like either of us absolutely swooned over this movie or disliked this movie. So there's obviously things you're going to like that I may not have, to get us in a similar range, right?
So much to me as this is special. Look at this. Like, that is the pretentious part of it, where it gets a little heavy hand, ham fist, whatever you want to say. It's just a little much for me, this part.
So if we jump ahead then in the timeline, right? Ciarán Hinds is the actor whose brother is in the coffin at the wake. He makes a scene, and then this causes him to be confronted by Mike Sullivan and Connor Rooney, Daniel Craig's character, the next night. And Michael Jr. tags along, and he's watching this through the slats in the barn door, and you understand that something violent is going to happen, because of movie tropes, because the son is there looking through the glass, and because you've gotten the idea that Craig is a wild card, even though they were told just talk, nothing else, that this is going to end poorly, and you just don't know how. And I wonder if we're going to disagree here, because the scene builds and builds and builds a quiet tension, and then ends with Daniel Craig executing Ciarán Hinds with a headshot, and they go slow motion for that headshot. And I was curious what your thoughts on that were in terms of filmmaking choice.
So the one thing I'm glad, man, we're clicking tonight, Gary. We're just having a good old time. I'm glad you brought this scene up too, because opposite of the last scene where I just thought it was a miss, this scene I think hits it in terms of the perspective that it's shot from. It's from Michael Sullivan Jr.'s eyes. You never actually go in the room. It's mostly from his eyes. The murder is from his eyes, and that's it correlates with what is the impact of this scene. It's not the fact that somebody gets murdered. It's not the fact that there's killing and violence. It's that this is Junior's kind of first experience with that. That's his first time he ever sees somebody get killed. And so having that shot from his perspective is what I took away from it. I actually didn't even think twice about the slow motion.
See, and I did, and on this one we agree. It's funny how often I complain about people using slow-mo as a trope or as a device to draw your attention to something unnecessarily and using it repeatedly in movies. I think this is the only slow motion scene in the movie. It's like 3 seconds long to extend the explosion of the bullet and the brain matter and the smoke and everything in the murder and Kieran Hines falling out of his chair, and then they move on, and it just, I like what you said about it being shot from Michael Jr.'s perspective, because I feel like that's what it is for him. Time is stopping. This is real.
Yes.
Your heart skips a beat in the negative sense where it's like, oh my God, and you frame this moment in a beautiful shot. Again, this is where the cinematography comes in. It's a still frame you could put on a poster or on a flash scenery of a teaser or something like that. Just a really, really good device in this case where filmmaking experience sort of comes in, like we were talking about Mendes. So I'm glad you like that scene as well. So he
doesn't get very far either. He witnesses the murder. He does not hide the fact that he's unable to hide the fact that he has followed along. They catch him. And this is where all the trouble starts, is because Daniel Craig's character realizes he's seen something. Can he keep a secret?
Yeah, and he walks away that night and says, "A good night for a walk. Take your son home," as if he's not gonna try and clean up the loose ends here. But we know as moviegoers that he will. And I
believed him. I didn't remember what was going to happen, and I'm
really?
Oh, he does trust him. So what did I was so far gone from what this movie would eventually be. Like maybe as we're talking about it I should have seen it coming. But I really thought that he was going to trust them here.
Well, and I felt like I didn't know if he was going to react that severely. I'd forgotten about him going to kill Mrs. Sullivan and Michael's little brother. I did think, is this the beginning of him turning because something else is going to come up and the kid's he's going to worry about the kid over time and start to freak out about it. But he just jumps directly into, you guys go ahead, but I feel like in retrospect, at that moment, he knows he's gonna kill both these people.
Yep.
And we jump ahead to the scene where he shows up at the Sullivan home. He sends Mike Sullivan out on a mission with a sealed envelope telling the guy that Tom Hanks is going to intimidate into a payment that all his debts will be paid if he kills Tom Hanks on the spot.
What a great scene this is.
Fantastic scene. And then simultaneously knowing that he's out, goes to the Sullivan home to kill the kid specifically, and I think in this case the mother's just collateral damage. She grabs her kid and turns her back to Daniel Craig, and they both get murdered in the upstairs bathroom at that point. And Daniel Craig falsely thinks that he's killed the right Sullivan child. Maybe he doesn't know there's a little brother, or he doesn't remember, or he doesn't have the stones to go check that it's the right one, but he kills one Sullivan child and the wife. And then at this time, Mike Jr. is coming up to the house, and he goes and he stands on the porch and sees Daniel Craig come down the stairs and pull his scarf down off of his face. And it just felt to me like a wonderful, another great shot. We're nerding out about cinematography here, but it just felt like a classic horror movie moment. I don't know if I'm thinking of Halloween or Friday the 13th, or maybe not a classic. It's Scream, where in Scream you can't see because of the light and the glass, and you see your own reflection. They shoot it from Michael's perspective again, where he sees Daniel Craig's face looking right at him through the glass in the front door, and then they cut away after a long hold in him staring into each other's eyes. You think they cut away to Daniel Craig's side of the glass, and he's fixing himself in the glass after this murder, composing himself to go back outside. And this gives Michael Jr. time to hide and not get killed. And I just thought that scene was so terrifying and so well laid out for something so hostile. I don't remember the music at the moment, but it felt quiet in a way that was very real.
Very authentic. And even just the
authentic,
idea.
That's the word I was probably searching for.
Yeah, well, I love it has that tension. You think it's a really great misdirection where you do think that they're looking at each other, but if I look out the window right now, the light here makes it more of a mirror than a window. Yeah. So when it's late at night, so I love that. I don't know how you think of that when you make a movie. Oh yeah, when I look out the window, I'm not gonna be able to see through it, and so you don't really see that used a lot. I really like this scene. Michael Jr. comes in. he is beside himself. He just sits at the table. And then Michael Sr. is racing home. He realizes what is happening to his family. He's trying to save his wife, but he's obviously too late. And just a great part. This movie achieves this really well, where they don't. It's back and forth, because sometimes they just hit you over the head with, remember this is a thing. But then there's a part where you never actually see the dead bodies. You never see like how violent this truly was, because you don't need to. You get it. This is a game changer for everybody involved. And all you really get is that scream down the hallway. You can hear Tom Hanks' character just let out this cry of agony.
Yep.
He can't believe that this happened. And like, that is way more powerful than him clutching the corpses of his wife and dead son. Like, obviously that would be a powerful image, but I thought this was way more powerful. And his son not moving, just letting it, like, he just probably did the exact same thing, and now he's letting his dad do the same thing. They're all just, I thought this was really great, and I was along for the ride at this point.
Authentic is a great word for that scene, and I'm curious, and you just said along for it at this point. So at this point in the movie, we're an hour in. Are you still, this is an A+ movie for you at this point still?
100%, and I love all the relationships that are happening. I really like Paul Newman's character. Hadn't discovered his Irish accent yet. He discovers it later. He finds it. He digs it up from somewhere. Really, I'm loving where this is going. The deception, at just the blink of an eye, the family bond that has happened. At this point, I didn't know who gave the order. At this point, we don't know that it is Daniel Craig going rogue. I thought it was Paul Newman's character, who's just, well, the kid saw it. He didn't.
But it's up in the air, right?
Totally. So there is a little bit of mystery still here, that it's not totally laid out. So we discover that John Rooney, Paul Newman's character, is very disappointed in his bastard son for going ahead and doing this. But another kind of a good way of showing how conflicted he is with his relationship with his own son, which is really the crux of this movie, is father-son relationships. He is so angry, and Daniel Craig's character is so ashamed, he just lets his old man kind of just beat on him. He just kind of cowers. He knows that he did something really terrible, and Paul Newman kind of beats on him a little bit, not really doing any damage, but just showing how disappointed he is in him. The beating stops, and he gives him a hug. And at the end of the day, they are family, even as Daniel Craig does something as despicable as this. Paul Newman's character realizes, we got to finish this off now. Like, you've started something, and we got to just see this through. And I hate you for this, but this is the life that we live.
Yeah, exactly. And so the bonds of family are shown there in a really interesting way. And then, so Hanks and his son go on the run. They're going to go to Chicago and try and appeal to another gangster to back him and give him a job and let him go do this murder and then come work in Chicago.
Yeah,
and I was just curious about one of the last scenes I wanted to talk about here. Because again, the last third of the movie, A, for the people who haven't seen it, I want you to watch it. B, I don't take as many notes in the final act because I'm watching the movie wrap up. So one of the last few notes I made was a question for you. When Hanks parks his son at the train station, I believe it is, where everybody's reading papers, to go up and meet with the Chicago gangster.
Yep.
And then Michael Jr. opens up his storybook, starts reading, and then breaks down crying. I think there's a couple ways to interpret those tears, and I'm wondering what you thought he's crying about in that scene.
I actually don't know what he's crying about in this scene. He's reading The Lone Ranger kind of throughout the movie. I'm not sure what he is.
So I feel like there's two ways.
There's a gun in
the
image, in the illustration that he sees.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like there's two ways to interpret this, right? He's trying to get a moment of normalcy by going back to his book, and it's hitting him that half his family is dead and that his life is over. And his father just said, "This building isn't your home anymore. It's just a building." And everything's hitting him, and he's overwhelmed. I think is what the surface reaction would be. And yet I really thought the juxtaposition of that image there of the ranger saying, "I've got the sheriff covered," right? And coming to realize that he's operating, the outlaw he's reading is sort of operating outside the law, and that his father is doing the same thing, and that the man with the gun and the mask, who he may have now always associated with his old man may not be the good guy. I feel like at that moment he's coming to the realization that his dad might not be the hero of this story.
Yeah, they do describe him. The kids talk about how their dad is a war hero. They're not really sure what he is. So that does hold up.
Missions,
yeah,
right?
He goes on missions.
The book is about an outlaw on an adventure, fighting for good. And I think that those tears are about that facade coming crumbling down as he recognized what his father is and that he might not be the hero he thought he was.
So I'm glad you brought this up because that's a really insightful kind of look into this. Michael Jr. is portrayed as a dumb character. The younger brother, Pete, is a smart one. Yes. They're doing their homework at the beginning and the younger brother is just nailing it, and this guy's got a blank page. I don't know that he connects those notions that you just brought up. I don't know that he kind of like has the reading comprehension to realize that they're, like he's reading the Lone Ranger and like for him to kind of connect those themes that maybe was too advanced. And for a movie that went out of its way to say this is not a smart kid, it's kind of silly. But so maybe that's, I don't know. I didn't make that connection, but it does hold up.
You didn't read too much into that. Okay.
So yeah, he's just, for me, him reading the Lone Ranger was actually him being dumb and that he always needed he was just a kid. And he needed a distraction. He needed something like that was his video game. That was his Pac-Man video games.
His Pac-Man video game. So at this point, this is about where I drop off with my note taking because we're going to get into the third act, and then this is where my enjoyment of the movie starts to turn because of maybe me putting unfair expectations on the movie. So at the same time as the scene we're talking about with Michael Jr. crying, Hanks is upstairs with maybe one of my all-time favorite character actors, Stanley Tucci. Mm-hmm. And he's getting turned down by Tucci as the Chicago gang boss or gangster in terms of giving him a job and giving him permission to go back and sort of get his revenge for his family being murdered and get sent away. And so now you've got an opportunity here for the movie at this point to just take a turn and become man on fire, right? And he is now all alone and it's him against the world. Newman and Craig are after him. He's been turned away. It's just him and his son, and he's got to decide, do we run and hide and try and start a new life, Jason Bourne style, we're going to go start a bike shop on an island somewhere, or come back in like Denzel and just whitewash everybody, right? And I felt like I was hoping for that this becomes a hyper-violent action movie where Hanks sort of turns into an assassin using all of the skills he's acquired over a very long career that make him a nightmare.
Tommy gun in each hand.
For people like that. Tommy gun in each hand, right? Yeah. And he's got his son with him, so it just becomes a mixture of Taken and Man on Fire and The Professional, right? With the kid tagging along. And at this point, he just becomes almost an iconic man in search of revenge. And that did not happen, obviously. For those of you who watched the movie, they go on a little jaunty bank robbing montage
just to get back. Casual bank robbing.
Yeah, and it's the music, and it's a montage scene with them robbing banks with the son teaching him to drive, and there's chuckles, and the kid is coming too fast to the curb, then too slow to the curb, and he's making really poor negotiations for a percentage of the bank rob heists, and it injects a little bit of humor and levity into the story that feels completely out of place in this movie. It should be the darkest moment in these two men's lives, and now they're having summer road trip bonding in the middle of a movie that was not about that. And it just, for me, this is where it went off the rails.
I feel like if Michael, so there's a choice that they make with the son, and it's that he is going to live a life of innocence, and ultimately we are reminded of that is Tom Hanks' goal the entire time. We're reminded of that probably 3 or 4 times, that he doesn't want this life for him, even though he's bringing him in. This is about as close as you're going to get aside from shooting somebody in the face yourself.
Yep.
You're in the life, but still Tom Hanks kind of wants to keep him away from that. So I feel like that decision to make that the path for the son is probably was what keeping you from enjoying this movie. It sounds like in order for this to maintain that dark vibe that I think you're looking for, the son needed to make the turn to become hid the father to follow the path of his dad and actually become a murderer. But the fact that that's not what is meant for him forces the whole thing to be a little bit lighter.
Well, I think the other option, I don't know that I necessarily needed that, because I feel like the other option, if you weren't going to go straight action movie from this point forward, you could have stayed in the slow burn drama that you were in, right? And had it be very much like A History of Violence, where Tom Hanks, against all odds and against all the environment around him, forcing him to let his son in, let his son help him, and it's them two against the world, keeps suppressing his son's desire to be like him and to help, right? And goes back to deal with Daniel Craig and Paul Newman without involving his son at all, and expressly saying, not implying, not hinting, expressly saying, you are never doing what I'm doing. I'm going to deal with this, right? And keep watching the son in the same way that maybe the son in the remake of 3:10 to Yuma with Christian Bale and Russell Crowe wanted to be like his dad, and he was like, no, you're not coming. You're not part of this. I'll deal with this. This is not who you're going to be. Like Randy said, they could have gone that direction too, and it just seemed like both of those would have been in keeping with what they built here.
No, I don't think so at all, because I think like with the time that it is, and just we talked about at the very beginning, like the whole, what is the communication style? There's not a whole lot of communication. It is lead by example. It's I will do this and you will follow, and I am the lead. Like he only really has to say it once where they're getting shot at, and he says, when I say down, you get down. And that's really it. He reminds his kid that he's in charge and do as he does, and not like he doesn't have to outwardly say, I'm just going to go kill this guy. Please don't ever do this. That I feel like is way outside of the time, the piece.
So maybe not in keeping with what we had seen for the first hour, but I guess what I'm saying is this conclusion, this whole climax to the movie, to me just didn't feel honest. It didn't feel in the same way that the reactions to the deaths felt so authentic and honest, right? And everything early on in this movie
he's so
felt
surgical,
true,
right?
Yeah, the last third of this movie to me didn't. So
he manages to figure out his money situation. They live on a farm for a little bit. He manages to get Paul Newman and his whole gang down an alley. He's figured out a way to get them all in one spot, and he mows them all down in what I think is actually a pretty decent and satisfying, revengeful, silent murder scene. I think he takes down probably 9 or 8 bodyguards all at once. They're trying to shoot him with pistols down the alley. Then he confronts Paul Newman, and they have a little moment, and Paul Newman just says, I'm glad it was you. He's accepted his fate, and then a huge blast of bullets, just point blank Tommy gun to the chest, more than is necessary. But again, I thought this was a very effective kill scene. I quite like this one. Then we move on to, he's made even more arrangements. He's basically just led up to Daniel Craig's room. He's taking a soapy bubble bath, I believe. Yep. Walks in, pops him in the head. Another nice kill. He's crossing T's, he's dotting I's and lowercase J's.
Nice.
Love me some Wayne's World. And then just forgets that Jude Law was after him the whole time. I was
wondering when you were going to pay that off. Yes, completely forgets that Jude Law exists, and that you as the movie viewer, I think they're counting on you forgetting that he's out there too.
I think some might, but he shouldn't have. And so I think you fell off too early. This is really where, when he walked into that white room, and this is how my brain works a little bit. As soon as I see that white room, it all, the rest of the movie, I remember exactly. That was the only part of the movie I could remember, frame by frame. I remember him getting shot from behind. I remember his son coming in and not being able to kill him, and that Tom Hanks ends up killing him as well. Very, as you say, predictable, but that is the point where it fell apart for me, that why does Jude Law get to be there? Why hasn't he been taken care of yet? The fact that when was the last time that he saw it? Did he even see him at the hotel?
No, because Jude Law, after he gets his face scarred by the glass vase in the shootout, right, when he's trying to get the books, he's gone for another half hour.
You should take
for me, predictable doesn't even say it. It was obvious in a way that like this is where I think people try and get cute with foreshadowing, and then at the end, like a movie like The Prestige, where they show you everything that was a hint to how it all worked.
Yeah.
Right. He said at the beginning of the movie, I was only ever with my father for one winter. So as soon as Tom Hanks walks out of the shadows to kill Paul Newman in the alleyway murders, right? You're just like, so when does Jude Law come back and kill him? Like, is it now or is it later?
Yeah.
Right? And it's happening. You know it's happening.
Yeah.
So okay, it doesn't happen in the I didn't remember the movie. It doesn't happen in the alleyway. Okay. So they tell him that they're going to let him go kill Daniel Craig up in the hotel room. Is Jude Law going to be waiting there in a chair with a gun to point at his belly?
Yeah.
Oh, no, they let him kill him. Okay, cleaning up loose ends.
Actually, I do remember thinking the same thing. Yeah.
And then they go to the house, and it's like, oh, yeah, the house is probably a good place to kill him. I wonder how he's going to kill him here. And then the kid stays out, and he goes into the house by himself. And as he's opening the door, I was like, oh, the house is empty. And that's where Jude Law is. You're like, you know it's coming, and you're just waiting for it.
Gotta check your
and
corners,
the whole, he gets 2 shots off, and then photographs Tom Hanks before he dies, right? And then the kid comes in and points the gun but doesn't shoot, and Tom Hanks does the final kill. All just seemed so... That's where I thought ham-fisted and obvious and lazy and first-year film student writing. It seemed like someone's impression of what an impressive ending would be.
Yeah.
And wasn't fleshed out and thought out as in the context of a film. It almost feels like they wrote this thing and then never reread it from the beginning and realized how ill-fitting it was and how obvious it was, right? Like, so it probably seemed great as an original thought, and I probably don't begrudge them coming up with it. Like, this is how this story should end, but it almost like never was workshopped to see how bad it was, essentially.
Yeah, the fact that he just sort of let him go, and he even says at one point, Tom Hanks says he knows what we're doing, he knows where we're going and where we'll end up, and then just forgets that he seems that he's in the clear.
Doesn't fit with his character. It's just in so many ways it's a bad final half hour.
Yeah, so I think we'll leave it at there. For the most part, I liked it. A couple problems, not far from a perfect movie. Every performance I really enjoyed.
Yep,
a lot of nice pictures. Well put together. Just again, like I started, I haven't workshopped my thoughts on this, even as we talk throughout the whole thing. I want to like this more. I guess that's really it. I wanted to like this movie more than I really do, or maybe even that it deserves. A lot of great performances, like we said. But let's rate this thing. I'm at a 3 out of 5. I think the performances are strong enough to keep this thing above mediocrity.
Yeah, that's what I gave it, and that's what I'm sticking with, 3 out of 5. And glad to have watched it because you get some really, really great filmmaking in the first 70 minutes of this movie. And I think if you watched along with us, I would think that most people would have agreed. There's not a lot of fat on the bone early on in the movie. So really, really glad we watched it. Thanks so much for the suggestion last week. And as we said, this is how we move from one movie to the next. We've got people giving us suggestions of where we're going to go from an actor or performer or director or writer of Road to Perdition, one link away to another movie. And I have to say, I am so excited for the amount of responses we got this week. So big, and we've gone so long that I can't even go through all the movies that have been mentioned. But I just want to thank Thane and Peter and Matthew and Matt Fody and Lee Navarro and Jennifer and Craig and Courtney and Corey and Chelsea and Blair and Antonio for giving us all the suggestions. Absolutely one of the best lists that we've seen. There's so many great actors in this movie, and it's reflected in the movies that we have on this list. We've got suggestions from Jury Duty and The Burbs to Layer Cake and American Beauty and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Away We Go. And there's so many places to go and so many great suggestions. Real movie fans, I think, if these people are using IMDb, great. But if they're not, the quality of the stuff that's getting suggested to us, Absolutely love it, guys. Keep it up.
Yeah.
So,
Shout out to Blair. Munich. I love me some Munich.
oh, that'd be great to get picked. I'd be so excited.
Shout out to Jennifer, by the way, always tweeting us on Twitter. I think Craig Thomas actually created a Twitter account just to join in on this fun.
Such a great guy. Saw him on the weekend. He told me he was going to contribute for the first time, that he had been listening. It's been a great week for me personally in terms of finding out about new listeners.
So thank you guys. It's the greatest. I just love this. And glad
thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a new randomization system here that Sean's going to click away at, and we're going to pick a winner off this giant list of movies. We've got multiple duplicates in here. Antonio and Blair and Lee gave us some retweets and some shares. And absolutely all of our viewership and listenership comes from you guys telling your friends and letting them know that they can listen and that this is out there. So we thank you so much for that, and we appreciate you helping us whore ourselves to keep this thing growing. And so some people have more chances than others of getting their 3 movies picked, but we're going to spin it up and see what we end up with here. What are we watching next week, Sean?
The random number generator has chosen, I don't know if we have a number 1 fan, but Jennifer Belland, we have chosen your movie, and by we I mean the random number generator, 2 Days in New York. I have zero idea what the hell this movie is. Let's do a quick Google search.
You have to figure out.
I don't know if you've ever heard of this thing. Let's have a quick look. Chris Rock and Julie Delpy. What have you done to us?
She's from the Before Sunrise, Before Sunset series with Richard Linklater and Ethan Hawke. And these are smaller, not necessarily rom-coms, but like one of those drama, real insight into relationships and human relationships and stuff like that. Apparently a comedy drama sequel from 2 Days in Paris. But Chris Rock, Julie Delpy, I'm in. I'm excited. I'm pretty positive that this is on Netflix right now, and I'm excited to give it a shot. I love Chris Rock in dramatic roles. I don't know if you saw Top 5 last year, which wasn't really a drama. It's just sort of a semi-serious, but I like that, and I like these types of movies, and I'm excited to watch it.
I don't know about this one, you guys.
2 Days in New York. It doesn't seem like it's your genre. Have you seen any of those movies I mentioned?
Nope.
Sunrise Before Sunset?
Nope.
Before Midnight?
Nope, this looks bad. Chris Rock's glasses, his goatee looks bad.
What about a movie like, did you ever see 500 Days of Summer with Zooey Deschanel and Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
No.
No? Okay, so these small romantic dramedies, maybe not a thing. I'm excited. I think it's going to be great. 2 Days in New York starring Julie Delpy and Chris Rock. I hope you guys watch along with us this week, and then we'll see where we go. Chris Rock is going to give us a lot of interesting places to go. I'm looking at the supporting cast here. Not a huge amount of stars. So we might be watching a Chris Rock comedy next week, although Daniel Bruhl and Dylan Baker, I think Dylan Baker is the connection from Road to Perdition, like you said.
Yep.
There's going to be some places to go, and I'm actually very excited to watch this movie because it's a perfect example of something that you and I would never watch.
Yep.
Me more than you would have watched this, but without this show. So I'm super excited to watch 2 Days in New York. And so the last order of business is just to pick what new movie we're going to go see in the theaters next week. There are 2 giant options, but I don't know if you've ever watched an Ice Age movie or care to ever again. I can say not my thing. The best thing about Ice Age is that it's got a colon in the title. It's Ice Age : Collision Course. But I'm all family movied out.
Collision Course.
Yeah, there you go. And I'm also super excited for Star Trek in the sense that
there's no.
It's Anton Yelchin, R.I.P. bro. It seems to be self-aware, hiring Justin Lin after losing J.J. Abrams and realizing that Star Trek, more than Star Wars or other major franchises, is supposed to be episodic. It's supposed to be an adventure film, like I was talking about, Indiana Jones, stuff like that. It's supposed to be less interconnected and more look at these people doing something new and interesting. And I think this is going to deliver on that front. Buzz on this is pretty good, actually, which is weird. It's turned around from the initial teaser a year ago, people not not knowing what they would do without JJ. So is it clear to you as well to me that we're going to see Star Trek Beyond?
100%. Apparently there's supposed to be some really cool theater that at West Edmonton Mall that was like a panoramic thing. If we can do that, I think we should. I'm excited. I hope that the Star Trek movies are sort of like the opposite now as they used to be, where the even number movies of the original were great. Let's go for the 1, 3, 5, and 7 movies are great. Maybe or just Prime movies. Who knows? Prime numbers.
Either way, I'm excited. We'll go see Star Trek Beyond. I will forgive it that they didn't put a colon in the title in between Star Trek and Beyond. I'm fine with it. Whatever.
As long as there's a JJ lens flare in this, I'll be satisfied.
Oh, they have to have lens flare. They can't get rid of that just because JJ left. So,
and as long as they've got the same music composer as Lost and all the other stuff that JJ does, then I don't ask for a whole lot.
There you go. Fantastic. So yeah, watch along with us this week. Star Trek Beyond, if you have time to go to the theater. 2 Days in New York, like I said, I believe is on Netflix, but if you can find it on VOD or something, let's watch 2 Days in New York. I'd love to hear your opinions. If you guys want to give us your reviews or opinions or thoughts on its score or anything like that, tweet us again at Gary T Movies, at Sean Capri, at We the Nerdy. You can subscribe on iTunes now, rate and review us there. We'd very much appreciate it. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're still putting this up on the YouTubes. At youtube.com/WeTheNerdy. And again, one of your best places for interactivity is making your submissions and seeing all the posts that Sean puts up online for us is to go to Facebook and find the We the Nerdy fan group. We, again, can't thank you enough for all the support and all the contacts. Sean, is there anything we need to plug on the site this week?
No, this is long enough. It's late. Holy crap, it's 12:30. Go to WeTheNerdy.com. There's cool stuff there. I do stuff. You do stuff.
And we can't wait to talk to you guys next Friday. Have a good this week's episode. Later.
I love you.